So what are the common issues that you've encountered during property inspections? And do you have some stories that you can use?
Unfortunately, I do. The biggest issue in houses is damp. And it's because of a construction error. I have in the last 7 years found one house that did not have rising damp damage. One house. So if it's
in all the houses you've inspected in 7 years?
Yes, I found one house that was not face brick, because face brick houses, you don't have rising damp on the outside, but you might have damp damage on the inside if the DPC was not fitted correctly. But I found one house that did not have rising damp damage.
But what do you think is the problem then when it comes to the construction of the house? And maybe perhaps touch on what you think could be the problem with the construction industry and how they build houses and how that can be rectified in your opinion.
So the issue is that the contractors, the bricklayers who build the houses, don't know their national building regulations. Then you have the site supervisor or foreman who doesn't know his building regulations, and he doesn't correct the bricklayer and say to the bricklayer, you are doing this wrong, this is how you must do it, okay? Then the developer or the builder or whoever's in charge over the site foreman, they don't check what the guys are doing, and they also don't know their building regulations. And people sit back and think, okay, the NHBRC is there and they are going to protect me. They are going to look after me. They don't. It's a national building regulation and the NHBRC regulation that the joint at DPC level must be created properly. The DPC is supposed to protrude. So what it does is the water will come up.
Say it in simple English. The DPC is supposed to protrude.
Out. It must stick
What's
out
a DPC
by the
for those who are watching?
DPC is a piece of plastic, a damp-proof course.
The black one.
The black one.
Damp course.
Yeah. And it goes on the outside wall and it must stick out 10 millimeters. That's what in this book, there's a drawing. The National Building Regulation and the NHBRC guidelines says exactly that. So what happens, you can't stop water through capillary action going up a wall. But the reason behind this is when it hits the DPC, it goes down again. And the regulations very clearly says that the plaster must be broken there. The plaster mustn't continue up the wall. So now what happens is they plaster the wall solid, they draw a line where they think the DPC is, and they think that's fine. But the water now goes up all the way, and you have the damp damage. Now, the NHBRC, they don't check up when they go and do their inspections on site. If they do their inspections, the banks don't do quality control. When you're building a house, they just go and check how much money has the builder spent, and they pay that amount out. They don't do quality control. So what happens is you as a consumer who have now bought a new house, you sit with a damp problem in 12 to 18 months' time. But the people who I do snag list inspections for, before they sign the happy letter for the bank to say, yes, I'm happy, pay the final money to the builder, if I do a snag list inspection, I say that is done wrong. You will have damp there in 12 to 18 months. Then what happens is the builder says, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I say to my clients, that's fine. Tell him to tell you in writing, in an email, Marisia doesn't know what she's talking about. Then in 12 months' time, sometimes earlier, my clients phone me in a panic. Marisia, you said we would have damp. We've got damp. So, well, told you so. Now you send that email back to the builder and you say, you remember when you said Marisia doesn't know what she's talking about? We've got damp. Come and fix it.
Yeah. So that makes me want to ask, how old were you when your father started the construction business? And how old were you when you now started to realize or be aware and be in the environment of building? And then when you started to work for him fully?
I started working for my dad fully when I was about 38.
When you were 38?
Yes, about 38.
Okay.
Yeah,
He had been
about-
running the company for how long?
He'd
then,
already been running the company for about 10 years at that stage.
at that stage?
Yes.
So you had no desire to start with him when you were 28?
I wanted to, but he wouldn't allow me. He said construction is not a place for a woman.
Construction is not a place for a woman. So those words are quite critical because that speaks to transformation of an industry. I'm sure now those are not the words that many females hear.
No.
So when you look at the construction industry and how things have been done back in the days and now, how do you think it has evolved over the years?
It has definitely evolved that we have a lot more women in construction. And the other problem that I see, or the issue that I have, is the NHBRC was a good idea. And this picture was painted that your house is going to be enrolled with the NHBRC, and the NHBRC is going to look after you as a home consumer. But in reality, they only assist you if the builder doesn't do snags in the first 3 months. They only make sure the builder gives you a 1-year roof leak guarantee and a 5-year structural guarantee. So only if there are structural cracks. Now, I am petitioning the Minister of Housing, and it's been taking long, and I'm trying hard, that I want the NHBRC to say and to force the builder to give you a 5-year rising damp guarantee. And the other issues that we have, when you build a new house, you are issued with COCs, certificates of compliance. But I find, for instance, a plumbing COC is issued. But when I do a snag list inspection, I find that they've used concertina pipes behind the toilet. Now, what should happen is the town council...
Crostina, guys. Crostina.
And they do it because the plumbers are not skilled enough to use a solid pipe to position the toilet. So they use a concertina pipe because they can squash it. Now what happens is the town council, when they come and inspect the property before they issue the occupancy certificate, they are supposed to check these things. They must check, is there safety glass where there is supposed to be safety glass? No, there's not. The glass in the doors are not safety glass. Is there a concertina pipe? The plan says there's got to be insulation in the ceiling. Is there insulation in the ceiling? They don't check that. They just take the COCs and they issue an occupancy certificate. And the builder turns around and says, I've got an occupancy certificate. I don't care.
So in that case, what advice would you then have for someone who's buying property for the first time? Be it as an investor or as a home they're going to live in, and how can they increase and maintain the value of that property so that they can later be able to sell it?
So the most important thing is to have a property inspection done before you buy a property. If you're buying off plan or you're building a new property, have construction quality control inspections done throughout construction. And then the most important thing is you've got to do regular maintenance.